Building downtown. Building downtown. Building downtown.
It's 2020. This is the Building Downtown. Follow us at the Building DT on Twitter. I'm Jason Kelly, your host. You can follow me at jkelleymma. Tonight, we're going to go to a simpler time. Joined with Joe Rizzo. Take things back to about a decade ago, 2010. Things were nice. There was no viruses going around. You didn't have to stay inside. And I met a gentleman in December of that year that has gone on to become one of my best friends, an older brother in a sense. You know us as a duo of Rear Naked Choke Radio, MMA DieHards Radio. I attended his school of Rizzo University. He's the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Rizzo. What's going on, my man?
Do I talk now, or is it
Oh, fuck, we're back to this. 2010 all over again. I like it. See, wasn't it a nice time? I was coming from MMA Religion. You were getting MMA DieHards going. We had George St. Pierre. We had Anderson Silva. We still had the WEC. Oh, wasn't it a nice time?
I mean, you could be hearkening back to like a month ago for these times too, right? Like it doesn't even have to be 10 years. It could be a decade, a month. Like so much has changed in the course of just a few short weeks that, you know, what's normal, not normal. Like you look back and you wonder how you never caught every virus or every germ that any person ever had compared to now. Like you're like, look at all this stuff. Like you're wearing face masks everywhere. You're washing your hands obsessively, you know, hand sanitizer, gloves, and changing your clothes when you come back into the house. And you're like, how did we never get sick, like to begin with? Like how are we all still here? But
we're here.
And then it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, we're here. But what the one good thing that happened, see, now we're sick of each other. It's been 10 years. A good thing that happened 10 years ago is we crossed paths. And we crossed paths through MMA media. Me coming from MMA Religion, you being part of MMA DieHards. And now you have a new thing going, Diamond DieHards, which is I mean, I know for the listeners, they probably think like, wow, he really stretched it out there, eh? Actually, you threw that out. The way it came about was me and you snowballing ideas off me. And what was the first one you had? And there was like a rock band podcast or some shit with the same name?
It was the Baseball Project.
The Baseball Project, that's right. And I was like, that sounds like sharp. But Diamond DieHards has a nice ring to it. And like I knew you like threw that like off the cuff because MMA DieHards, but Diamond DieHards, it rings even better. So yeah, baseball fans out there, definitely check it out. Diamond DieHards, that's available on all platforms, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify. Are you gonna get on YouTube eventually?
Yeah, it hasn't been that much of a rush just because of the nature of that podcast at the moment. I'm just trying to build a foundation. So basically, like without getting too much into it and boring your people, I'll try to put it in some layman's terms, like so you know it doesn't matter if you know about baseball or not. So basically, the one thing you do know about baseball is that there's none happening right now, and this is the time of year where it usually does, right? So there's a game company called Stratomatic, and it's not like a console game. It's a board game that, you know, some people still play as a board game, and you know other people play electronically, you know, computer to computer, peer to peer, or over the internet. And what Stratomatic does is it's a very data centric game, and it's based on probability, and it's based on, you know, data sets that are driven by baseball, which is a real big like data kind of game. It's a big, like baseball is all about stats. MMA is, they try to put stats up there, right? And they'll tell you how many times a guy punched another guy and kicked another guy, and you'd be like, yeah, that's great, but like the other guy won the fight. Like those stats don't mean anything to me. Baseball is like the opposite. Like if you're really good, your stats are really good, and the analytics are good. It's you know, there's not a lot of fooling people with that. So it lends itself to this kind of this statistical replay of a game, which is what you usually do. Like you replay the games. You have the stats from the previous season and you replay it. You know, you might draft it the same way as you would draft fantasy teams, where, you know, we put all the players into a pool, we have a draft, we come up with teams and that. Or sometimes you would select the Blue Jays or the Yankees or whatever, and you play them against each other, by yourself or with other people. But what they're doing this year is, because there's no actual gameplay going on in major league stadiums, they are simulating the season. And you've seen there's a few companies that are kind of doing it, but Stratomatics is the best, honestly. Like, MLB The Show is doing it, and it's good, but that's a gameplay. That's like a video driven thing. This is really like a data driven thing. And they play the games every day as if they're happening. So we do a podcast based on that. And that's really what I focused on in the first couple of weeks of the season starting. But what we're going to move to at some point is, we're going to have chatter like among the, our baseball bunch of, from Fordham, which is where I went to school. And that's where, our Stratomatic birth came for, pretty much all of us. And, 30 years later or thereabouts, we don't necessarily play it every day or all the time, but we still tell the stories. And, it's good guys and good baseball people. It's kind of like us, the way we just sit around talking. It's like being on the couch, having a couple of beers and just shooting the shit about whatever. And eventually then we'll get on to having different guests, maybe people that you've heard of or people with some prominence, and it won't always just be about like the Stratomatic simulation, because that's only going to last for a finite period of time. Eventually, I think we're going to get back to where we were 10 years ago, which is, they'll play games and people will be able to go to them. And then, having a podcast about a simulation is not really going to be very interesting. But what will be interesting is to have a podcast about real life and the stuff that's going on, and then throw some stories into there. So we got a plan. I mean, and that's the way we're building it. But yeah, like 10 years ago, right? Like, we would talk about, if we were doing a podcast about baseball, we wouldn't really be talking about a simulation as much as we would be talking about games that actually were played. And if we were talking about, you and I and MMA, we'd be talking about, you and I in the beginning didn't have necessarily that many conversations about MMA. We had conversations about grammar and about writing and about how to put together a content plan and a content management system where you could take something, input it, have that data be worth something today, and then be able to repurpose the data like 2 and 3 ways and, and ways and days later, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I remember too, I don't know if you remember or not, one of the first things you said that got through to me about, because I was a chef at the time working in a kitchen, if somebody comes in to eat for the first time and they don't like the meal, or it's just not up to what they want, or if it's something there that doesn't bring them back, or something that is, say it is a grammatic error, say it's burying the lead, or setting up that first quote by saying in the paragraph before it exactly what's in the quote, right? Like, there's something there that's going to turn someone off who knows what they're looking for. Is that person going to come back in my restaurant? I remember it was one of the first things you said to me that clicked, and I was like, holy fuck, I need to learn this writing shit. And I bugged the shit out of you. That's back when Google Talk or G-Chat, I guess it was called then, Google Chat or whatever. And all the fucking time, I was like, I got a question. Non-stop. I drove you fucking nuts because, I mean, that right there was the thing that made me realize that you could teach in a style that I would get. You know what I mean? You had methods that you had of your own that work unique to the person you're teaching, as opposed to just like, well, Rob Tatum and Bryan Henderson were there when I first came over. They're both excellent at what they do. They both helped me a ton. I had a lot more conversations with Bryan, especially because Bryan worked in kitchens as well. So, Bryan and I had that in common to talk about. But it was very textbook taught. You know what I mean? This is correct. There's no, this is incorrect, or this is why this is correct, this is why this is incorrect, or like a little tool to help me get it. It was just like, this is the way it's done. So it's like, okay, well, there's more to it, especially when you're writing, right? Well, why is this done this way, but this is done this way, when it's kind of the same? Well, they're not the same thing, right? Like, it's just capitalizing different things. AP style, holy fuck. that was a whole new dictionary when I started learning that shit from you. And I like too how there'd be certain things I would ask you, and instead of giving me the answer, you'd send me a link of something to read, so I'd have to find it my own. That was also very, very helpful. So yeah, like you said, when we first started talking, for the longest time, it wasn't necessarily MMA. The reason we were talking had to do with MMA, but what we were talking about was about writing and all the things that go into that, and being a presence online, and everything that went into that. Without, I mean, at that time, the podcast shit, because that didn't come till a little later on.
Yeah, but it wasn't just about that. It's not just that there's a right and a wrong. You have to look at the genre that you're in, and you have to look at the business side of it too, and you have to have a realistic expectation of what your knowledge is, what your ability is, not just as an individual, but like as a company or as a unit, and then take those lessons, apply them to what you have, and inject a big dose of reality and understand, you know what, I need to like bend the rules here a lot, or we need to do this a certain way today, but in a month, we need to be able to still be able to do that, but have built on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can't, especially in the, and we're talking about like 10 years ago, right? In 2010.
Yeah.
The idea
Crazy.
of podcasts and the idea of starting websites is very different than it is now, and integrating that content. Like podcasts were
I
still
think
the Wild West.
if you want to touch on this, I think we got to go back a little further, because you got in at IFL days, International
Yeah, we got
Fight.
in. Yeah, we got
That's
in
when you.
in
So what year was
2007.
that?
It was
7.
like, yeah, it was the beginning. It was the end of 2006. So basically, it hit. I mean, you could say the airwaves, but it's not the airwaves, because that really, that expression comes from broadcast television. So the airwaves doesn't even apply to cable television, because cable television is not over the air. By the way, just so you know, in case you want to see my communication.
See, he's a vault of information. You see how I went to school, folks?
my communications degree is worth something. So it didn't go out for public consumption until the start of 2007, but it was in the works. We started it really. It was born in 2006. And I'm about to throw you like a massive curveball right here, because I probably, like, it probably would have been more appropriate for my show, Rear Naked Choke Radio. I still call it our show, because you say, I don't do that podcast anymore, but like you'll always do that podcast, because I
have to
make you. I will always push you. Hey, you roped me back into doing my own freaking show. So
and then I left you.
Okay, so the way that this started, right? There's a history behind it, and I've only ever told it on Rear Naked Choke Radio, because if there's some way, shape, or form, people have been with us for that many years, like they might actually remember this stuff. And there's a few people who have. There's a lot of people along the way have listened to the show, but they don't necessarily remember it in its first incarnation. So the way that the show started was my friend Ted Takvorian and I, we grew up together. We were best friends, and we had the same 17 jokes since high school, and we just told the same 17 jokes over and over. And the kind of guys that just, you like this individually, but when we got together, you couldn't stand us. That was us. And then like Ted eventually like moved away. He moved about like an hour away from where I lived in New Jersey at the time. And we were just looking for a way. We're like, like we really, like now we don't even get to hang out. We don't even get to see each other. Like we could talk on the phone. Like we needed like a planned activity to keep us, like sort of in touch and sharp. So we said, hey, let's start a podcast. Now, fortunately, I was like in college, I was actually on the air. I was at WFUV at Fordham University, which is pretty, it's pretty prestigious. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm like a scholar, but for people going into sports media, like on the air, every New York team has somebody that went through WFUV as part of their play-by-play or color staff. Every single
shit.
one. There's like no exception. So,
Fuck.
and there's even more working in there. So, and I was one of them, and I was, I mean, listen, I was good in college. I made ESPN's Plays of the Week with one of my calls on uh, on a Fordham basketball game where they won at the buzzer and won the Patriot League title. And in fact, NBA Hall of Famer Mike Breen called the game for ESPN, and I called the game on WFUV. And when they put the buzzer beater on Plays of the Week, they used my radio call over his TV call.
No, fuck.
So,
See, that's a thing that, like, over the decade we've known each other, I've got little bits and pieces, but never really got the whole thing. Like, I have probably like fucking 8,000 fucking questions about like your NBA days, working in the Nets locker room and shit like that. I think that could be like 3 other fucking shows.
oh yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
but here's the point. We're still, so I had a little clout. And I'm a licensed board op. I mean, I don't know if I could walk into a radio station and run one today, but my license is somewhere for the FCC here in the States. But I'm a licensed board op. I was on the air, 4 years, which was very rare. Most freshmen never got on the air. I had a regular spot
Wow.
by Christmas, which of my, at the end of my first semester, I'd gotten on the air because I went to cover the Heisman Trophy ceremony, like award. I got there, I got a credential for that, and then I came on the air and I did a report from that, and then I actually got a regular slot my freshman year. So it was what I wanted to do, and I eventually became a sports writer instead of a broadcaster. That's just the way that it went. But so many years later, I was like, okay, I think I could figure out this podcast thing. We went into Radio Shack, we got a couple of ideas, and you touched on it a little bit. I was a sports writer. I would go to cover games, Nets, Devils, mostly the New Jersey teams as part of my job. Like after it was my company was called Sports Ticker, which was owned by ESPN. They moved up to Connecticut in 2003, and I didn't go with them. I had left before that, but I still covered games for them. And from covering those games, I used to sit near the radio engineers. So I knew, 2 like legendary radio engineers in the New York area are Carl Infantino and his son Mike, and I knew Mike really well, and Carl, and they're these guys are like literally the best. And I told Mike one day in the press room, I'm like, hey, listen, I'm starting a podcast, but I kind of like I don't have like I don't even know where to start, and I just figured like you managed to just have these crazy setups and you get people in the air. Like I figured I could pick your brain. So he talks to his dad, Carl, and he's fortunately lived like a town away from me. We meet up, and he goes, "Oh, here, Carl had a bunch of stuff for you." He gives me a mixing board that he's like, yeah, you could take this one. We just got a new one. He's like, it's still good. We were going to just throw it out. You could take it. It still works great. And he gave me like 3 Sennheiser desk mics, which I don't even use because they're stick mics, and I don't like if I get the brackets and stuff to hang them, I could use them, but they're so sensitive that if I put them on a desk and you tap the desk with your fingers, you'll hear it. Like they're amazing still. And
when Krill and I were looking for mics, we were going through all kinds of different mics, so I have somewhat of an idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're amazing. Like he didn't need them anymore. So he gave me, a bunch of plugs. He's like, yeah, just you could start with this. And then he evil geniused. I don't know how the hell he did it. He evil geniused. He's like, I don't know really the computer stuff. He's like, I don't know the computer stuff, but let's see if we could just figure it out. He evil geniused that mixing board into my PC, and I wrote down every single thing that he did, and that was my setup for like 10 years. Like let me tell you, I don't know how the hell he figured it out, but it made all the sense in the world. And I was able to, back then, I was doing stuff like with the mixing board and the computer that other people wouldn't do. Like I ran video with it too. I started doing video with it. And I used to go to like on site. I would go to on site to Bellator events, and
I was just gonna say, that's what you're using, like LA Parameters Boxing Club RNC radio days on Ustream?
yeah, LA.
That was that board?
Yep, that board
Holy
lasted me.
shit.
That board, I must have gotten 10 more years almost out of that board. Like I don't even. Yeah, probably.
So
Maybe.
what started first, RNC Radio or MMA Diehards? RNC Radio.
Okay, so yeah, so wait, okay, so I started jumping ahead, so that's a bad job by me.
Okay, I'll let you go back.
I was going somewhere very, very, very specific with this.
Okay, I'll let you keep going.
Okay, so I jumped a little bit ahead of myself. So Ted and I were figuring this out, and we do a bunch of like test shows after Mike Infantino. All the credit in the world. Love you, Mike. Haven't seen him in a long time, but Mike Infantino, a huge key to getting me started here, and Carl Infantino's dad. So Ted and I do a bunch of test shows. The first one was in my old house, and I needed a mic. So I had like a crappy little analog headset, and we put the headset in between a table, like in between us on a table, and we both talked into it as if it was like one mic that we were talking from a headset. And that's how we've started. So we did a bunch of these like test episodes, and I don't even remember what thing we had them on. And we would record these shows, and then we figured out like how to get a guest, like how to get somebody on the phone and do it. I did it through Skype. I ran the Skype right on that computer. I didn't have a separate input. I didn't have a separate phone. I was able to do it right from that computer. I spun the audio from the Skype into the mixing board, and like I don't even know how I did it. So we did all these test shows, and the name, we needed a name for the show.
Yeah.
So what we decided to call it was, The Ron Show, featuring Joe and Ted. And the reason why we did that was because we always wanted our friend Ron to be on the show, because like he was always in the middle of the same 17 jokes that we made since high school. Like they were either with Ron or about Ron or something, like Ron imitation, like whatever it was. It's like an homage to Ron all the way. So we're like, yeah, we're just going to call it The Ron Show. And he would never come on. Like he just never would come on. Like he just wouldn't, not even for like a test episode, nothing. So we're like, we got to call it The Ron Show. And we're going to call it The Ron Show featuring Joe and Ted, because we just, we thought it was funny. Like it was a goof. Like we were just starting it for the hell of it.
Yeah.
And so that was okay, because in the beginning, these test shows, they were just stupid. Like we would just talk, like, we would get a coworker or a friend, and they'd come on, and they'd, we would say like stupid, like Howard Stern shtick stuff from like 20 years ago type crap,
Yeah, jerky boy shit.
Yeah, we weren't fooling anybody. We had our friends on kind of like as guests, but we were sort of interviewing them.
Oh, and I thought you meant like voices and shit, because I know you're no stranger to jerky boys' voices.
No. So we would just, like we would just talk to them and get them to talk about like taboo things or whatever. It was just silly. It was it was a goof. It was a goof. It was dumb stuff. So what we decide is that we get this email from Ron one day, and it's like he says something that's like raised our eyebrows, and I can't, to this day, I can't even remember what it was. He like says something that like raised our eyebrows and was like, and if you see my parents, like, don't mention anything to them about this. The details are mundane. We're like, what? We're like, wait, until once you said the details were mundane, now I know. Now I want to know exactly why what the details are of whatever it was. So, but it was like such a typical, Ron thing for us. And that turned into the tagline of the show, the Ron Show featuring Joe and Ted, mundane family entertainment. That's what we ended. That was the original name of Rear Naked Choke Radio. So that was fine. And then one day we had my friend, if you've listened to Diamond Diehards or RNC Radio, you've heard my friend Jerry Milani. He's one of my best friends. He's a PR guy. He was doing PR at the time for the International Fight League. And he came on and he did one of our test shows and whatever. And then he says, at some point, he goes, "Oh, we're, trying to get one of the ring card girls. Like she's young, and we want the ring card girls to start doing like PR and get comfortable. So she'd be a good guest for you because like nobody's gonna listen, and you get the feel for like what it's like to do media stuff." And that is how we became an MMA show, because we had Emily Miller, who is still she still does it for, I don't know if it would the PFL now, I guess. She's still ring card girl for PFL. She was an IFL ring card girl. We are still in touch 13
She's
whatever years
still
later.
Professional model, whatever.
She's still a model.
Yeah,
and she was on the 10-year
anniversary. Not an Instagram model for the listeners out there. Like she's like a legit model. Like,
oh yeah.
She doesn't take pictures of her ass and post them on Instagram for likes. Like, she's legit. Yeah. So, whether it's in the MMA realm or other things that she's worked in, Emily Miller is legit as fuck. Has been doing this shit since, well, as long as you're talking a decade and a half ago, basically, and she's still at it, right? So I mean,
right around her, I don't know, like her.
She deserves respect on her fucking name for sure.
Her 19th birthday or something like that. It was right around there, or 20th birthday. That was one of the things that were. Long story short, still around, 10-year anniversary show she was on. It was just me and her.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was like, hey, we should just be an MMA show. Like, let's just do a show about the IFL. Why not? We have complete full access to like whatever we want. And so that's what we did. And we quickly became the official show of the IFL. We started doing video live streams. They had big plans. They were doing IFL.TV. They had a whole video system that they were integrating, and our shows were going to be featured on that. I mean, basically if the IFL had made it, like I wouldn't even be doing this show right now because you'd be such a peon to me.
I still would have crossed paths with Sean Tompkins and he would have brought me on your show. So I would still know each other.
I would have brought you on. So that's how it starts. And
so that's how you get up to Rear Naked Choke Radio. So we're looking what 2000. Sorry,
hold on. I'm about to tie it all together. Hold on. So but it was still the Ron Show featuring Joe and Ted, which was now confusing to everybody because the Ron Show featuring Joe and Ted, Mundane Family Entertainment. First of all, it's a long and farcical name, right? Which still is funny, but then it really started to make absolutely no sense because you'd interview people and they'd be like, "Okay, why am I on the Ron Show? And who's Ron?" Was always the question that everybody asked once they sat down. And of course, I'd be like, "I'm Joe and that's Ted," and that would be the answer. There was no Ron; he wasn't there. So eventually, what happened was, we ran into the issue of it just really like the show was starting to do pretty well, and it just didn't make any sense to have a name that wasn't associating it with MMA. So, our buddy Kitch, who was helping us with all the web stuff, one of my good friends, he says, the Rancho featuring Joe and Ted, it's mundane family entertainment with a rear naked choke. And I'm like, oh, that's good. So it was that for a while. So it wasn't just the Rancho featuring Joe and Ted, mundane family entertainment. It was the Rancho featuring Joe and Ted, mundane family entertainment with a rear naked choke. But then I was like, you know what? Why don't we just call it the rear naked choke? And that day, I'm like, I'm taking rear naked choke on Twitter.
Oh,
and I beat
shit.
Yep.
I didn't even know that. And I was the host of the show for like 5 fucking years or more.
I beat everybody to it that day. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to start my Twitter. Rear naked choke. Boom, it's there. I'm taking it. I'm never giving it up. That's how I got it.
That's fucking awesome.
The show really, we called it the rear naked choke. And then after a while, I thought the idea of calling it Rear Naked Choke Radio was better. And then, as we sort of broke out and did a little different stuff, it just like RNC Radio just rolled off the tongue a little easier. The people who knew what it was, like who knew what an RNC was, would know it's an MMA thing. And other people, if you had guests that were like a little outside the realm, it still sort of just made sense as like a name, I don't think anybody ever confused us with Republican National Committee Radio or anything like that.
Yes, they did. Or what was the other one? The Latino
Spanish
one.
The
Spanish.
Yeah.
Remember there was that person that they took the name or some shit and you tweeted them? This is probably 2016, 2015. Remember that shit? But it wasn't even RNC. It was like rear naked choke. Like it was like very close to what it was.
It was rear naked radio, I think.
Yeah. And you tweeted them, and they tweeted back and they apologized and they took it down. So I mean, we even said I remember doing RNC radio at that time. We shouted them out for it, right? Like, thanks guys. Thanks for not making this a headache, and I'm glad they respected it. But it was still funny.
Yeah. It happened a few times. There were similar ones, and I'm not trying to like prevent anybody from making a living. I mean, but it's always been.
Yeah, don't take your brand.
Yeah, it's never been something that's put money in my pocket, but it's passion and pride, and it maybe one day it will, maybe it won't. But. Let's keep the option open.
Okay. So actually, before we go to money in pockets, I was going to sponsorships for websites for back then. But so you go RNC. How does MMA DieHards come about? Obviously, you ran into Hector Castro somewhere.
Okay, so this is another Jerry Milani story.
Fucking Jerry.
Yeah, he's always love it. I even called him out on the Diamond DieHards. I'm like,
I think from now on, I'm just going to say that Jerry introduced me and you.
Yeah,
it seems like he's responsible for everything.
He kind of indirectly is. So Jerry, I guess, through IFL stuff maybe, or I'm trying to think if it had continued on after. I mean, there was some point where the IFL was going to be folding, but before it was folding, it really became evident that, for the first thing that became evident was that, Ted wasn't going to be on for the long haul. Like it was too much. Like he was pretty much driving up, and like one of us was driving an hour to do the show in person with the other, like once a week. And, it just, at some point it got to be a little rough. And his interest, like his operative on the show was that he was like the new fan. Like he was new to MMA. He didn't know a lot about it, but he knows people and he knows like kind of how to conduct an interview and he knows how to get people talking about stuff. So he was good in that role. Like he was sort of like an antagonizer in a way, but he was not going to give you, a sit down with Bas Rutten, talking about like technique. Like he'd talk to Bas Rutten about like his movie career, so as we moved more toward like the nitty gritty of MMA stuff, and the travel and all that, like it just became evident that Ted wasn't going to be able to continue on. So I was going to have to figure out a new way forward. And, part of that also was just the idea that, it had to become then more MMA centric rather than just IFL centric. Because when we were sticking to the IFL, Ted was okay because he knew a lot of people and they knew him. So it was like, you know, it was a pretty soft landing spot. But once we were getting into like UFC and we decided to open it up, we're saying we're not just IFL anymore. We're going to start covering everything. You know, that was like made it easier for Ted to move on. And, you know, we went through a few co-hosts over the years. It was, I think actually the first one that came in and replaced Ted was Damian Ross of the Self-Defense Company. And, he came on and like he shot the numbers like through the roof right away, but it was just, you know, a little difficult. We couldn't continue on too much longer, but he gave me a good year or so, I think. And then Jeremy Fullerton from Tops, he came on, and that's where we ended up with MMA Diehards because Jeremy knew Hector Castro and Jerry Milani, I guess, had worked with Tops and Jeremy and you know, somehow like we all got together. Like Jerry introduced me to Hector. Hector was doing the ground and pound radio at that time. And you know, so we had different shows, and then Hector and I started, you know, working together.
Hold on. Hector did ground and pound radio?
That was his. Yeah. Ground and pound
really?
was Hector. Yep.
I remember seeing the tab there, but there was like no like updated shows or anything. So I don't think I ever went and listened to it.
Yeah.
I know he joined the shows every now and then, but I didn't know that was his show at first. So, okay, sorry, go on.
He did that with Ryan Loco.
What?
Hector. Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, Ryan Loco and Hector were ground and pound.
How isn't Ryan California, West Coast? Or is that just like later on in the game once I don't know.
It didn't matter.
Ryan,
it was Blog Talk Radio, so it didn't matter.
But you know, I mean, it was a different time then, right? You couldn't network as easily then, right? The social media wasn't as big of a thing then. I mean, we were just getting into Facebook probably around that time, or a few years into Facebook around that time. MySpace didn't do much for anyone. So, yeah, no, I just, you know what I mean? Think of who we've talked about so far. It's all New York, New Jersey guys, right? So the Loco thing. But, yeah, holy shit. Hector and Ryan Loco is ground and pound radio.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was.
Wow.
But
okay,
Ryan,
sorry, go on.
So the thing was that was the sponsorship deal for Jocko, I think, was the clothing company.
This is where I was gonna go when you were talking about sponsorship shit. Didn't Jocko pay a lot? I heard rumors of that. Not for that show. So it's not like I'm saying I heard Jocko used to dole out the money to shows and websites and shit.
Well, listen, from my experience, they were never like a sponsor of mine, so I don't really know, and I don't know what they were giving Hector, but the more valuable thing they were giving him was Loco. Because he had a pretty big following. I mean,
still does. I mean,
and he did Loco Life. You know, that was pretty funny. And every time I went to an MMA event, he was always like, I swear to God, for like 3 straight years, every time I traveled to an MMA event, he was the first person that I would see. Like, oh, shit, you're in the hallway. Like, I'm not even here. Look at you're here. You know. Yeah. And there's the occasional tweet back and forth. I tweeted with him about something, like, I don't know, in the beginning of the pandemic. I don't know. He's still, you know, still around. He's still doing his thing. But yeah, that was so. Hector and I then met, and we said, hey, you know, why don't we start? You know, why don't we put ourselves together here? And, you know, we could start a site. Like, there really wasn't that much competition then. And we had the power of the shows where, you know, they weren't big, but nobody had a big MMA podcast then, really, besides Sherdog. And the Sherdog stuff was I used to listen to it. And, you know, like, so I was, I guess, in that way, a fan of it, but I never felt like the bar was too high. And I think that was one thing that you and I used to talk about, right? Like let's get our content out there. The bar is only as high as whatever people are already listening to or reading. Like, it's not that high. There's not, you know, ESPN wasn't covering MMA really, right?
No.
Like they weren't. So
No,
you didn't
it
have.
was more of an I hate the word underground because it means not popular, but it was more of an underground sport, right? Like it was.
Well, it existed on the internet, and it was the UG. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's what it was.
And it really did birth a new a breed of media coverage, sports media coverage, especially. Um, well, I think it's safe to say Ariel Helwani's been at the fucking forefront of it because he's kept that level of professionalism that the sport was always gonna need when it reached Fox or when it reached ESPN where it is now. We need that's our guy, but um those guys were not covering it on those networks or those TV stations at that time. And what we had was guys in fucking, Silver Star t-shirts fucking covering it, right? And giving it proper coverage. So yeah,
Right.
that's where you got your coverage from.
You had some people, like one guy that is just completely flushed out and lost in the shuffle, is Sergio Nan, who was he brought MMA to USA Today, which at the time was a big deal because that was a credible media source, and he was a real professional and he knew how to cover it.
Yeah.
And he I was lucky, like he used to come on the show, and that was a sponsorship deal that we had. We became MMA DieHards did become a USA Today affiliate site.
I remember that. And I remember when I would see articles or like interviews that I'd write into featured pieces, they would go on the USA Today little scroll thing. I remember it was on the bottom right corner of their sports page. And I'd sit there and I'd wait for it to scroll back. And that was mine. And it's like the same one comes up 9 times, like 9 rolls later. It's the same one, but it's mine. I remember fucking I'm sitting at home in my apartment in Ontario, Canada. Like fucking holy shit. I've been a fan of this for so long, and I hook up with these guys, and I write this article, and it ends up on this ticker thing on USA Today. This is fucking nuts. Yeah, that was fucking mind blowing to me when I see my shit pop up on there. So I remember that one.
The one thing, if you go back and look at MMA Diehards, we started it, and we didn't have we weren't doing a ton of money because we just didn't have it. Like I didn't even have a job,
Yeah.
And we were going to, it was going to be seeds, and you planted the seeds and you cultivate it and grow it out.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was we got too good too quickly.
Too fast. Yeah, scalability was a huge problem.
And we couldn't scale it. But one thing that we were doing was we got Maggie Kroll and her video expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And as great as Maggie is in front of the camera, she's an absolute wizard behind it, a genius behind it. And everybody would say, why don't you put her in front of the camera? I'm like, because she's fucking amazing behind it or in front. Like, I don't care as long as she's with us, And so we would do videos, and there just was no competition from people doing videos. And that's one of the things that got us with USA Today. Yes. They're like, oh, you guys they're doing videos.
Didn't that also get UFC credentials as well? Didn't that help with that?
That was right. And so what happened was, as Jay jumps ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I mean, you sort of know the story, right? But what happened, what we were not prepared for, was the fact that 8 months after we started a website from scratch, that we were going to be one of 2 sites that was credentialed at UFC fights. You simply could not get credentials to the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't. Loretta Hunt was the #1 MMA writer.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not.
She had her credential rescinded. No, but here's the thing.
Dana also put one of the most ruthless, vile fucking videos ever talking about her. So
here's the point, right? They were in control of that. So when you see, as somebody entering the market, that the best writer at the time can't even get a UFC credential, getting a UFC credential is not part of your business plan at that point. You're like, okay, well, we're not going to get a UFC credential, but what else can we do? And then the next thing we know, we're like, holy shit, we got a UFC credential. Like, how the hell would, like, people, what? Us? You know? And so we ran with it, but we just, you know, if we had more money, you know, and if I, you know, if I knew now, if I knew then what I knew now, you know, I probably would have somehow went into Hawk and you know, bought my own video equipment. You know, I would have bought like a better camera, you know, a good mic setup, and you know, just gone and did more of that stuff, and you know, figured out a little bit of the production more, and you know, I mean, we probably would have turned it into MMA Junkie or something similar to that, and you know, essentially that's kind of how Ariel made it. You know, he had Casey Layden, and that was his cameraman, and they went all over the place, and they did these really good videos, and you know, we were doing the same thing. I mean, I saw him in the press room.
Yeah. No, fucking. That's one thing that Hector and I used to talk about all the time. If we only had more money. Well, I remember one thing Hector used to say too. It's and like as you've said many times throughout this episode, you know, you're not trying to like big yourself up or anything, but the one thing Hector and I would always be like, fuck, I wish we had more money. I wish we had more money. And Hector would always come back with, yeah, that and more of you. Like I remember the one time he said to me, he's like, I wish I could take you and make like 6 of you. And he's like, if I could make 6 of you, we'd be fucking set. Because fucking like I was just a workhorse on that shit, right? Even down to, you know, people that get into that, because me coming through, even coming into MMA religion was all fucking like a fluke basically, and then getting to work with you and Hector and everyone we had come through, the great Amy Barton, the MMA Diehards Wonder Chick, as she was known as on Twitter at that time. Fucking one of the greatest recruitments we've ever had. Next to me, obviously, I'm number one. I'll debate it with that bitch till the day I die. But you know, like I paid attention. So anyone that gets that opportunity, who's as much of a fan as I was at that time, and still am, right? Like it. Sure, you want the interview. Sure, you want to be recognized. Sure, you want your stuff on the ticker on usatoday.com, right? Sure, you want all that. But I knew right away, like, I got to stick close to Joe. Joe will teach me the fundamentals of all this shit, right? The fundamentals is, and I know that from sports, right? If you have the fundamentals, you know them, then you can start doing other things. If you fucking have no fundamentals, I mean, you're going to have to be a gimmick of some sort. And look at gimmicks of today, like the Schmo. I'm sure you know who that is. That's a gimmick I enjoy. It's a little Nardwuar ripoff like, but I don't think he ripped Nardwuar off by any means. He's talked about on his actual podcast with Helen Yee that he didn't even know the fuck Nardwuar is. He's not a music guy. He's a sports guy. Whether that's true or not, who knows? And even if he did get some inspiration from Nardwuar, you know, some gimmicks work, but I knew from what I wanted to do and the quality of work I wanted to put out, I needed to align with someone like you who's going to teach me fundamentals, right? I can't Aaron True myself. I'm not doing that. Remember that guy?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, there's some people who could do it, but the gimmick just is a gimmick because it by nature
doesn't
won't
work
last.
unless you can do it.
And even when it does work, it has a short shelf life.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, unless it's you, like Chael. You know what I mean? That gimmick never dies because it's in him. It works. But, you know, picture if everybody start trying to be like Chael Sonnen. It doesn't work. It comes off cringy.
Right.
I'm not a gimmick guy.
That's a good point. I have to say I didn't necessarily think of it like that. He does have the gimmick and he plays it like that. And I guess there's certain
Conner, room, but I mean, you know, other people that you can list tons of people, and I'm sure multiple sports that have some sort of a gimmick that's not necessarily a full gimmick, but it's
the thing is,
shtick.
right? But the thing is, like you talk about Chael and you talk about Conner and you talk about them being a gimmick, but the thing is, fundamentally, they were great fighters.
Yes.
So I don't know if the gimmick thing applies because the schmo fundamentally is what? Like he's just a schmo until the schmo runs out and
Dude,
everybody
have you
gets
checked out
tired
his
of it.
podcast?
I can't say I have.
You should. You should. You should check out episode 1 because he gives you a little background to him. I think he'd be surprised.
Did you have
In a
him
good
on
way.
your show yet?
Nah, I'm not. That's not the direction I'm going in.
Jesus, you had me.
Yeah, but fucking, we're not done with you yet. We're not fucking done. We just opened MMA DieHards. How could we be done?
Oh,
So,
boy.
MMA DieHards, MMA website. Things like Wix didn't exist then. Hopping on the internet and making it as easy it is to do anything, whether it's record shows, do video, build a website, social media platforms, it's completely different. Where did you and Hector decide that, like, let's open this website? What kind of things did you guys have to go through? Like I said, it's not Wix. It's not, what's that other one that used Squarespace or whatever I don't know if that exists anymore. That shit wasn't around. I know MMA Dieards was built on WordPress. Is that what it was built to begin with?
Yeah. So basically, we had to make a decision, but we weren't going to be able to do it ourselves because neither of us really had a background in it, and what we were trying to do was above what you would have just taken as a WordPress blog. So we didn't want to just have a blog where you could have just, opened it up and whatever. Like we wanted to have the domain. But what I really was after was things like tagging and the relatable use of different pieces of content.
So that basically be SEO?
Yes.
Okay.
But not just that. Using the power of the archive to make the foundation for a site that could last a long time. So the idea that, SureDog had all the traffic back then because they had the library of all the fight results. And there was nobody was going to compete with that. Nobody was going to compete with that, Like you always had to go to SureDog to just find somebody's record. So that means every time an MMA person wanted to look something up, they went to SureDog. It's a lot of traffic.
Yep.
And I was one of them. So I was like, okay, that's not a war that I could fight. In fact, I'm glad to keep going to their site because that gives me a good reference point. But I'm also glad to turn them into, Baseball Reference, and I'll do the articles and the podcast. You guys have the database. That's great. But what I wanted was, I wanted a relational. I wanted relational artifacts of content where you could go to our site, and if you were looking for something from Chael Sonnen, you'd put, you'd click the Chael Sonnen tag and you'd have every podcast he'd been on for us and every time he got mentioned in an article and or relevant to him. And I even wanted to catalog all the guests on all the podcasts and be able to sort by guests. So say you like Bas Rutten, you could just click Bas Rutten and you'd find easily all the Bas Rutten shows appearances when he was on Rear Naked Choke Radio, which in the beginning was pretty often, by the way. Yeah. Good friend of the show. Very good friend of the show. Haven't had him on in a long time, but I'm sure he'd come on again in a second. But that's not free and that's not easy. So we got with this web development group. And, again, it was always like, we just had a really small budget and, we had better ideas than what we could really afford. But the moment that we took to the video thing, I mean, especially really with Maggie, that was a big difference maker. But some of our early videos did amazingly well.
Well, what about even development of the site? Like, was there, that was all out of pocket between you and Hector?
Yeah.
And then how'd you recruit people before you got to video? Like, how'd you recruit writers? How did you? I mean, same process. Fucking, you guys found me.
Well, Hector had known a few people because he was networking around when he was doing his podcast. He had
Okay.
networked around like sponsors and things like that. So I guess people, different people shared different names and he kind of networked in there. Then he would give me the people and I would take care of all like the writing and the content and just building that plan. Because remember, before you guys were there, I was writing everything.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm. That's why I'm wondering, where the fuck did we get? Where did the
I
more
wrote
writers
the
come?
news, I wrote the news, I wrote the recaps, I wrote the show updates, I wrote
Because by the time I got there, Bryan Henderson was there, Rob Tatum was there, and for those who don't know them by name and that are MMA fans, combatpress.com. That's their shit. That's their joint now. So, I mean, I'm sure people are very familiar with them. I'm trying to think of who else would have been there. Well, there was other people there, but not people that helped me with like you and those two, right? There was Pete. He had his show there at that time
Pete Sumalong,
when I came, and who was his co-host?
Cameron Chow.
Yes, they were there, but I had no interaction with them.
Yep.
So yeah, writer-wise, fuck. What did you have before I came?
Me.
You poor soul, you. Holy shit. Yeah, because writer-wise, after I got there was Rob Reynolds, who I brought. Well, Conner and I came together, but Conner was kind of just, doing stuff with MMA Weekly, DieHards, and kind of just floating around.
You got to use last names because you didn't mention Conner Cordova yet.
Conner Cordova. Sorry, the Cordova family. That whole Cordova family is like you mentioned earlier about Jerry. The Cordova family. They're responsible for so much of this in so many ways. But yeah, so there was me, Conner, who really, I don't even know if he was doing writing at the time. Then I brought Rob. A guy named Alvin came afterwards. He was a huge hip hop fan. Mark Hench, but that was after you were gone, wasn't it?
No, I was there for Hench.
He was a fucking great kid. I love that kid. His enthusiasm was off the charts. I love too how he'd be like, yo, like load me up with interviews and this and that and this and that. And I'd be like, all right. And I gave him like 2 interviews and like another like radio recap or some shit. And he'd be like, yeah, so I got a lot of homework this week and a lot of studying to do and I have to get this done. And but I never held it against him because I never thought he was bullshitting me. He just, he was very eager. And then, his load of homework and shit would come for the week in school. And plus he was a digital editor for the Washington Times as well, doing that while he was in college. So, I wasn't going to give the kid too much of a hard time. This was after you were gone, Josh something from Junkie. Remember what I'm talking about? Hector brought him in.
Josh from Junkie.
Yeah, Hector brought him over from Junkie. And him and I never saw eye to eye at all. And he just stopped writing. There was him. And you know who, I don't know if you know this actually, once you were gone, Hector was fucking working on bringing E. Spencer Kite to MMA DieHards.
No, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Well, according to Hector, it was like close to a done deal. And I told Hector, I was like, so what do him and I both do here? And he was like, basically, because I became feature content manager after you left. So I would still be feature content manager. With this Josh guy, that was where the problem was. He felt like, I shouldn't say he felt like this because it's never been said, that he never said this. But it was like, what it seemed like was he was like, well, I know John Morgan. I write for these people. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? So I was worried about the same thing. And I told Hector, well, I don't know, figure it out, but I'm not going through the same thing again. If it's going to be another fucking same issue, let Spencer take shit over it, and I'll find somewhere else if you want him in here. And Hector was like, no, 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 no. And like looking back on it, obviously I'm like, I don't know, fucking my ego might have played a part in it. Like, fucking, what is this guy doing here? My fucking castle, right? Like,
well, see, the thing, so where my specialty is that I understand the assets when, it comes to like even human resource assets.
Yeah.
And there was no way that, I was ever turning anybody down who was going to come try to work for us because we needed so much help. But I figured out the way to make everybody work together. Who would do what? Try to define the roles clearly.
But also, I fired every fucking writer that I had, and it was left all on me.
Well,
that's not even a joke.
No, I know, but you gotta delegate, and you gotta take your lumps. But you also have to give, you give people a chance to shine. You put them in position to succeed wherever possible, and you don't need that many of them to succeed. And yes, some of them are going to fail, and some of them are going to succeed. But if you never put them in position to succeed, none of them are going to get the chance, and then it always ends up on you.
Exactly, and that's a lesson I fucking learned. Right, speaking back to you teaching me, you set me up. Plus, I wanted it to be in a position to succeed. When I got to that point, it wasn't like I was power tripping either. I just had so much on my plate, like working full time. Plus, MMA DieHards is more than a full time job. So I would fucking, and not knowing how to delegate or manage properly, I'd fucking snap and just fuck it. Okay, you missed your assignment. Fuck it, you're done. Don't come back. Right? You fucked this up. You're done. Don't come back. You friggin', you can't do this properly. You can't you don't know proper grammar. Fuck it, you're done. Don't come back. And like you just said, now it's even more of a workload on me. And Hector told me that. He was like, yo, you're going to fire everyone. You're going to have nothing left. And that's what fucking happened. And then, well, actually, before we get to that point, so continue what you're saying, but I have nothing left.
So the way that we had it structured at the time was Hector actually, he didn't tell people or explain to them how to write the news, but he compiled the news staff. So that was like Rob and Bryan and you, and then you guys would talk, and I was doing like the featured stuff mainly with like an injection from the news guys. So I wasn't even really dealing with the writing staff that much, even though I was like the editor in chief. I was, I would help out and I would oversee it, and I would, put the guidelines at it as to how something would be done, and then go through and edit it and stuff like that. But, between Rob and Bryan and you, we had a pretty solid run of getting news out. And I mean, we even broke stories. Like that was kind of like a big deal, like we were breaking stories. Like we broke stories in digital, digital print. I don't know, is that what you call it? And we broke stories on podcasts. Like, I mean, it wasn't a lot, and they weren't always big ones, but we got some good stuff back then. Like for what we were doing it on, and on a shoestring budget, and losing money and never being able to pay anybody. It was a pretty amazing accomplishment, actually. And the idea was that we'd build like sort of a podcast network, and the interviews and the featured content that we would write would be based on the interviews that were done on the podcasts. So you wouldn't have to like double interview people, and you'd get the benefit of, okay, if somebody wants to read about Ken Shamrock, that's great. But if they also want to hear him, they could hear the interview, like they could read it, or they could hear it, or they could do both. But it's if you're just writing stories, right, then you're kind of limiting what you could do. And it was a model that I think we were ahead of the curve on, because that was like our plan. That was like our actual you know, the content plan that I came up with was, the strength that we had was that we had some really good podcasts that were our own and others that we could associate with. And, it would be one place where you could get really good podcasts and you could get news and you could get featured stories. And, we just tried to do a little bit too much. And then the video thing came in, and that was really like, that ended up being the game changer, because these sites would have loved if we just did videos only. Like that, like USA Today would have loved, they wanted us to just do video, video, video. They're like, we don't need you to write anything. We got people to write, but videos, we need videos, man. If you give us videos, we'll give you blah, blah, blah. And, they're not cheap to make if you have somebody that's an actual professional. Another, we could just wrap this at some point, but like two things to get to. Hector did at one point, essentially, he agreed. He was talking to Megan O'Leary, and she was gonna like, she said, yeah, I'll do some stuff for you guys. And then, like, literally later in the day, she got a job, and she was like, yeah, so I'm not gonna do that anymore. I can't remember. Was it MMA?
It was Heavy, wasn't it?
Was it Heavy? Maybe it was Heavy.
Heavy.com, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I could be wrong. That could
I don't remember exactly.
One of the other stellar all-star fucking legends that produced out of that MMA Diehards produced, but I'm pretty sure it was Heavy that she went to.
Yeah, so that was like literally hours later. Like, I remember him calling me. He's like, I got Megan O'Leary. I'm like, really? I'm like, who is she again? And but she was like a Jersey girl.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's like, I got Megan O'Leary. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And then like later in the day, he's like, yeah, I don't have her. She went to whatever. I don't know. So I think maybe it was, I don't know. She went to Ariel's site, didn't she? Maybe she maybe had been with Heavy before. I don't know.
Somebody went to Heavy. Did Maggie go to Heavy? No, from Diehards.
Maybe it was Maggie. Maggie had to go somewhere good. She couldn't stay with us.
I almost went to Sweden. Remember that?
I know.
Oh, man.
And then the other thing is to hearken all the way back to the Ron show. Okay, the Ron that we're talking about has been he's been hit very hard by the pandemic disease, and fuck. Literally as we were talking on this show,
yeah,
I just found out that he's like had a dramatic improvement, and like he massively turned the corner, and he's like doing 100 times better.
Yeah, fucking go Ron.
So shout out. It's great news. I don't want to get into any HIPAA violations here, but literally as we're talking about it, like that's what I was going for before. I'm like, there's a point to this story, but it's that like Ron's been really I mean, it was very touch and go. And
talking about him fucking brought his spirits up.
And now I find out he's really, really turned the corner. So
fucking phenomenal.
But it just, like you and I were talking about too, it like this thing just spread like wildfire, and people who are even being careful, or people just don't know what hit them. There's a lot of people that are vulnerable out there. There's people that are vulnerable that don't even realize
I have no fucking clue
that they have compromised immune systems, or they have underlying health issues. I mean, you're seeing a lot of people that had no idea they had underlying health issues until they find themselves like in the hospital with this thing. And still you got people out, gathering at concerts or whatever. Like, I don't know. So it's just crazy. But yeah, those two things I wanted to I wanted to wrap up in there. The other thing that, if you wanted to switch gears a little bit, but I don't know, I feel like we've been going on here for a while, is that you talk about 10 years ago how MMA really existed. You didn't really like the word, but the word is underground. And, that's the battle rap culture, right? I mean, like, where is battle rap compared to MMA as a culture? Like, what year is it? Like
I said to a guy, his name's Christian Smith. He does battle rap media stuff. And I haven't seen him pop up lately, so I don't know if something's going on with him. I hope not. I hope everything's good with him. But I don't know. At the most 2 years ago, and it was on Facebook, I could fucking find the message and screenshot the motherfucker. He goes by Woody Smitty. His real name's Christian Smith. We were in conversation, and I told him I see battle rap in the same place I saw MMA at a certain time. What it needs is proper media representation. And I wasn't picking on him. What he did was, it's his own thing, right? But it's not. There was no Ariel there. There was no. Not even like the professional coverage, but I'm trying to think of other examples that MMA people would know or that you would even relate to, like say or Bisping. Like how Bisping has a podcast now and he's a former fighter. It's like a former battler, or even like this guy Matt Hoffa, My Expert Opinion. It's a great battle rap show. It's out now, massive. Like it's very, very good. It's picking up steam, fucking by the minute. Like I told Christian Smith, Woody Smitty, at this time, it needs proper representation to get out from the underground, because it's in the same place it was when MMA was, where we only had like a couple people covering it. You had to go online, you had to find a YouTube channel, or you had to find a website, and those things weren't getting tons of hits. And because of that, also the battlers and people associated with the scene, they weren't too keen on jumping on different shows and this and that, because they don't even know who the fuck they're going to get on the call with or on the camera with, right? Unless it's one of very few people. Since that time, there's been the Matt Hoff show that's came up. Pat Stay Tuned podcast. Check that shit out. The things he's doing on his Instagram, the one-on-one interviews. Check that shit out if you're a fan of hip hop. There's other people too who have really broke into this battle rap realm since I've had that conversation with Christian Smith. And it wasn't even like right after. It might have been within the past 18 months at the most, 14 months at the most, where I'm starting to see things pop up. So you saying that is spot on. That's where it is. Like, especially that's where it used to be more so, but it's still not. There's what's that shit called? I don't watch it, so I don't know. There's a thing called where like celebrities do like battles against each other.
Oh, well, I thought you were gonna say your weight.
The fucking the this
and
show
by the
anyway.
Way, and now the tagline for this show is Jay Kelly talks with battle rap media expert Joe Rizzo. That's the whole lot. That's the whole description of the show. Not all the other bullshit that we just talked about. Just this.
There's fucking whatever this show is, where like celebrities battle each other. Real battle rappers fucking work for the show and write the stuff so it's like PG content. Right? Like it's fucking, so it's crossed over in that way where they're getting other opportunities and other shots. But it still hasn't crossed over to real what's considered mainstream. I think the media presence and the proper media presence it's getting is shining a different light on it, and showing also kind of what we did, and not just us, but other people in the MMA realm at one point. I don't give a fuck what you're doing to keep your weight down, right? Who the fuck are you? What's going on, right? Like what? Who is Mike Easton? Who's Dominic Cruz? Who is fucking whatever name, right? We never gave a shit about how's your fucking cross training going. We don't give a fuck about that, right? We care about we're more in the people and the background story and who they are. Like Swayze Valentine, right? Picture if it was just like, so what's it like getting in the cage and working with cuts? We don't give a fuck. We already see that. We know what that's like. We sit cage side at many of these events, right? You talk to Swayze Valentine about so many other things. Look at the story we get out of her. And that's like with most of our guests. We're getting that now out of battle rap, but I still think it's never, ever going to completely come out of the underground when you got like, how can I go like look over this?
No, I got it.
No, as I said recently, there's Big K.
Here's the thing. It might, okay, and if it does, if it does, listen, just listen. Oh my God, just listen.
Big
the host
K's
of the
never
show.
going means.
I'm the guest. You're gonna let me talk. Wow, I can't believe I just pulled the guest card on you. That's so cool.
You're a guest. Fuck. In my house, you can wear your shoes on the couch.
Ew, that's disgusting.
Fuck your couch, Rick James.
So if it goes more mainstream, you're just going to see a slightly adjusted, more polished version of it than the one that you're used to. The same as the MMA that you saw, the MMA that you saw in the early days was more raw. You know, in the very beginning, it was called no holds barred fighting. Why? Because you were allowed.
Content, though. The content. The thing is, you cannot put gloves on words that come out of mouths. You can put them on network TV. That's not going to happen. Right? So real battle rap, like it's that when you're just cutting into somebody's soul and like exposing them for the biggest piece of shit that they are. I don't think that's ever going to be a thing we'll see on NBC.
That's one dimension of what you're seeing. You don't know what the other dimensions are going to be. You don't know what a new generation is going to pick up and take aspects of and move it to a new generation where it's, you know, more palatable to larger audiences where, you know, it becomes acceptable. And then one day you wake up and you're the grumpy old guy yelling at a cloud saying, that's not fucking battle rap. He didn't steal anybody's soul. And they're going to be like, you know, selling it off as battle rap. I mean, and that's what happens. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes it just gets so popular and so viral that, you know, it makes it big and it has its own big following.
It is. That is already happening. But when it comes down to like the essence of it all, this guy Big K, okay, he battled this guy Adi Boom fairly recently, and the video was just released on YouTube last week, the week before. Okay. Big K, you know what Justia.com is, where you can get like public record from court cases. Okay, it's a United States website. Like it doesn't apply here. Big K went on there, downloaded the guy's court case, Big K paid his own lawyer to go through the documents and find out parts that proved the guy he was battling is a snitch. That's why he just did 7 years in jail and his co-defendant is doing 17. Buddy has his first battle back and Big K passed the documents around with a highlighted part to everyone in the room and then continued to bomb on this guy, starting every sentence with snitch boy. That will never, ever, ever be, you know, Drake mainstream or Leonardo DiCaprio mainstream. Like, you know what I mean? That's never going to be out there all over the airwaves, as you said, right?
Not my point. No, not my point. Not my point.
That's the essence
my
of battle
point
rap.
is, but a UFC pay-per-view in 2020 is different than a UFC pay-per-view in 1995. That's my point. It looks different. It's a different version. It's a more sanitized version of what you're seeing. It's not the savagery is not nearly the same. It's more of an accepted medium of
But that will never be
art
accepted as
or
what
expression. Why not? How do you know?
it's accepted to me.
It'll be accepted to people who want to pay for it, but
Me.
but there
I'm
might be
people
other
that wants to
people
pay
that
for it.
there might be more polished, sanitized versions of it and different levels of it that are not there now that would never appeal to you or might not appeal as much to you, but would appeal to other mass audiences. That's the point. Could kids battle rap?
I've seen it, but it's toned
Right?
down.
Okay. But that's another way, right? It seems can kids fight MMA?
Oh, it better be real toned down. How
Okay,
young are we
right?
going here? 6-year-olds
Oh,
getting fucking Vitor kicked in the face?
kids battle rapping and kids doing MMA will have to be much more sanitized versions, right?
Yeah,
So
you can tone the versions down, but at the end of the day, UFC is on pay-per-view. Well, I mean, so is Battle Rap. But UFC is on ESPN. I don't ever see like real Battle Rap being on ESPN. Not ESPN, but the equivalent of it.
HBO
No.
or a television pay-per-view. Why not?
No. Pay-per-view, yes. Pay-per-view. You're paying to view it. That's how
Or
Battle Rap
HBO.
works.
It could be they could have a tour and HBO or Showtime or something is televising it. Why
Yeah,
not
but
that?
I'm saying like as far as like fucking every Saturday night there's a battle rap event on this cable network television and Disasters on there calling people faggots and fucking like you know what I mean? Like the most like there's no real racial slurs. Obviously, black people call white people fucking honky and cracker and everything, but whatever. But there's no like hard racial slurs like that. But like Disaster saying faggot, that's a thing that's gonna happen. You can't just have that on network TV on Saturday nights like you can MMA.
I don't think network TV, but I think that it could be on like a premium cable for sure.
Well,
And you know what? And then you know what would happen?
there already has
The
been.
rappers would start getting paid, right? Instead of making a pittance or not really even being able to make a living, right?
Oh shit! You hear that, bottle rappers? New Jersey Twerk's gonna come get you. You keep talking about rappers make pittance.
I'm
No,
not.
apparently they don't.
Look at
No, I
the
know.
look at the
I'm just fucking around. I'm just fucking around.
Roan.
Apparently they.
Look at the. There was just a big article where Roan talked about the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
I know.
if listen, if Roan says it, I think I'm good repeating it. So I don't have to know too much about it to. I didn't walk into this show with a blindfold on.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not.
you have more
So
Sharon freestyles on your show than anyone else, except for
yeah,
Wild 'N Out. Except for the Wild 'N Out show, as far as shows go. But Sharon, when he was on Pat Stay's show a couple weeks ago, that was like the best Sharon freestyle ever. So we're gonna have to get him back on, so you can get him to freestyle for you again. Because you got Sharon what 3-4 times,
yeah.
and
He,
every
he might
time
want to do. He might want to do Diamond Diehards if he sees that I had my Jay's cup out today for dinner.
he'll fucking freestyle about anything.
So point is this, right? Right now, it's a struggle for that. Like it's hard or impossible for them to make a living just on that. They have to have other things, and even that even goes for the top guys. You start getting, like a TV money, so to speak,
Well, there was
and then
these
you
guys DNA
increase
and
the.
K Shine.
Hold
Hold on,
on,
because
hold
this
on.
adds to your
You,
point. This adds to your point. These guys
I didn't
DNA
even
and
make
K
my
Shine.
point. I didn't even
This is
make my
gonna
point.
add. This is gonna. I think it's gonna help you make your point. DNA and K Shine. 2 or 3 years ago, the NFL hired them to do freestyles on. I don't know if it was Sunday games or whatever the fuck it was, or probably not the NFL, but a TV station. So and obviously I don't watch football, so I don't give a shit, but I'd see these things pop up on YouTube. So I don't know if it was halftime or what it was. They would do actual off the top freestyles back and forth, and it'd be toned down so it could be like during an NFL halftime, not on the field, like it was on like TV, like in the studio. and they would freestyle, and they would each have a team that they would have to freestyle back and forth and debate what's going on with what team off the top of their head.
Okay. So my point is this, that if they start getting TV money, then they have a better chance to see, hey, this is a career, and I could put myself into this career full time.
Would a gig like that,
and then,
would that be TV money?
No, it's got to be consistent. It's got to be.
It was every Sunday.
Right, but that's maybe for a year. If this is an actual tour, that's where there's big money involved. If you start putting the money there,
that's
the
what
talent
I'm also
will grow. The talent will grow. You'll get even more talented people that are doing it and participating in it. And then you'll see that those people, as they come into it, they'll start to bring something new. And then, you're not going to have people running around saying faggot all the time on there. Okay. It's going to be gone. It's going to be, that's the point. Those guys are going to be, those guys are going to fall to the wayside because they're not going to be able to make it. Same as you see MMA fighters, you look at these guys and you see the techniques and everything that they used in 2005. And you're like, okay, this guy was great then, and he would get owned by the 20th best guy today. Owned. Owned.
Okay.
By him,
but
right?
Okay, so that DNA and K shine thing that they had for like that NFL season every Sunday, do you think that'd be a decent paying gig?
That's not really the point that I'm trying to make.
I'm just asking you because you know a little bit more about that side of the fence than I do.
I think they probably got some bucks for it. They probably didn't.
They didn't get paid like $300 an episode or anything, right? Like they probably made something off the fucking thing.
They were probably so willing to do it to get the exposure that they could have, they probably would have done it for free, maybe,
DNA is known for battling anyone, anywhere, at any time. Roan, who you just brought up in a battle, said DNA would battle somebody for a Sprite. So, what you're saying is very correct, but
yeah. So I hope they got money. Like I hope they got paid. I mean, I want these guys and women to be able to make money doing it. Yeah. But the thing is, the more like anything else, MMA started attracting better athletes when the pay got better. That's just the bottom line. That's why you still see a lot of boxers. You're like these boxers, like why didn't this guy go into MMA? Like he's like a pretty good boxer, but like, man, if this guy was doing MMA the whole time, he'd be even really good. And the thing is, he can make more as like a pretty good boxer than he would as like a great MMA guy. Unless he becomes the top guy, he's going to make more as a boxer. And here's another thing, and I've talked about this over the years on RNC radio. I've been in professional locker rooms for years, like professional sports locker rooms, especially NFL. Okay. You look at these guys in NFL locker rooms. Okay. And most of these guys, even the small guys, would be in the higher weight classes of MMA. Mm-hmm. And these guys as athletes are, even the worst guy on an NFL team would be the best athlete in your county or your area, like whatever, like your town at minimum.
Now,
like blow you away good. That's how good the worst guy on an NFL team is. And if that guy was fighting MMA instead of playing football, like if all those guys were competing as fighters instead of competing to be football players, the people that you see fighting MMA right now would be, very few of them would be among the elite. Let's just say that. Very few of them. Because the level of athlete that goes for the NFL and the NBA and the NHL and Major League Baseball, the level of athlete and the pool of athlete is so much higher because there's so much more money available. It's such a bigger payday for you. You have such a better chance of, landing a job and having it, be a life-changing amount of money just for making the team, that, you still see people, the best athletes go for those sports. And it's very, very, very rare. But that's why a guy like John Jones he would stand the test. Why? We know because two of his brothers played or play in the NFL and were very good and are very good players, like top level type players. So he's got, an athletic pedigree within his family directly. And then you see some of these guys that were like Greg Hardy was in the NFL. Okay, he hasn't been fighting all these years, and he walks into the UFC and he's beating people. Now he's a scumbag piece of shit. But
I was gonna bring up Greg Hardy before, but I remember not too long ago bringing up Greg Hardy, and you're like, "There's nothing to talk about."
Look, I'm just saying, as an athlete, he's not welcome in football anymore, right? And just as an athlete, there really would be no, like, do you think an MMA fighter at 27 could all of a sudden say, you know what? I don't think I want to fight MMA anymore. I want to go play for the Vikings. Like even Brock Lesnar, who's the freakest athlete ever. Like, okay, he actually almost made an NFL team and he didn't actually make it. But he almost did. But he was a pro wrestler and he came into the UFC and he became the champion. So you just can't walk into the other sports and do that. The level of athlete is just, there's just more. It's just different. It's just harder. The pool is just so much deeper. So if you apply that same logic to battle rap, right? If you start talking about people who, instead of becoming literature professors at Harvard, can say, you know what, I could make just as much being on the Showtime SmackDown tour. like okay, like, all right, am I gonna, like, if this guy's like literate, maybe he's just gonna destroy all these profane people. I mean,
that bullshit, right? That bullshit before I told you that where celebrities battle each other. I've never watched it, heard about it. Obviously, I've seen clips here and there. I don't know what the name of the show is, but it's like celebrities come on and they battle each other.
Oh, is that like CNN or whatever?
I don't know what the name of the show is, but anyways, the battlers who I've been a fan of, who are like top-notch guys, they write for these celebrity battlers, but they keep it like PG. You know what I mean? That's got to be a decent paycheck, right? So I get what you're saying, right? Like as it evolves, like there's opportunities that are going to open up. The more mainstream it becomes. What's that fat dude's name? He does something like that too, doesn't he?
Jay Kelly?
No, the other fat guy.
Joe Rizzo.
James something. I don't know. I don't pay attention to pop culture shit. It just crosses my path because of battle rap stuff.
Oh, LeBron James?
No, he's a fucking fat white dude. You'd know who he is.
Wait, LeBron James is not a fat white dude?
My wife watches one of these fucking shows, doesn't she?
Wait, LeBron James is not a fat white dude? Dude, really? Am I confusing him with somebody else?
If you know a fucking fat white dude named LeBron, I want to meet him.
Sorry. I had to. What the hell show are you talking about? I'm sorry. The boot.
I'm looking it up now. James Corden? Is that right?
James Corden?
Is that it?
Yeah. But
yeah,
No, doesn't he have like people in his car? Like, doesn't he do that thing? Carpool karaoke? Is that
Rap battle show? Drop the mic.
Drop the mic, yeah.
That garbage.
whatever.
So battle rappers write for that show. So you know what I mean? Like those opportunities you're saying are they're coming along, and another thing battle rappers are learning how to do is use their brand. Look what Sharon did. Sharon is so intelligent. That Wild 'N Out show, Sharon was on Pat Stay's show, Stay Tuned, a couple weeks ago, and Pat got Sharon to explain how Sharon got on Nick Cannon's show. Nick Cannon issued a challenge to any battle rapper at KOTD, URL, any of these top leagues, RBE. Sharon said that, I think it was his aunt or his mom, one of the two, said, "Oh, Nick Cannon said blah, 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 blah." And Sharon was like, "Oh, yeah." And like, "You should probably say something to him." And Sharon was like, "Fuck it." So Sharon made a video dissing Nick Cannon and coming at Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon DM'd him and was like, "Yo, I've always been a fan of yours. I like how you took advantage of this opportunity." Sharon's on his 6th or 7th season now on MTV of Wild 'N Out. So there's opportunities coming for the ones that know how to use it. But as far as it being, or even getting close to being so mainstream that people will just be able to have opportunities thrown at them, it's nowhere near that. It's nowhere near people are throwing things at them, like, just, you know, like it's a new thing to do, like the way MMA blew up. Fuck, there was a time where you could be fucking bottom fucking tier UFC fighter, Bellator fighter, and you would have some sort of fucking dynamic fasteners, some fucking showing up at your door.
Yep. Look, you never know what's going to be the turning point, right? Like in women's MMA, we were talking about, you know, all these fighters and talking to them on RNC radio way before, you know, a lot of people even knew that women fought.
Yeah.
Tara LaRosa, Shayna Baszler, who, by the way, has been the WWE NXT champ and just fought at the WrestleMania with no fans and lost the title match. She had a show on the MMA DieHards radio network. She had a show.
Keep going back to DH.
Yeah. And now, like, what did she do? Well, here's how she ended up. Like, so she's always had it. She's always had that whatever. But, you know, she was basically like us, you know, and she was just grinding it out. And what did she do? She went on as a veteran fighter. They watched as Ronda Rousey came from, you know, a completely different realm from the judo world, and, you know, came into MMA and took MMA by storm and got, you know, women into the UFC. And these girls, you know, were watching her do this. These pioneers are watching her like waltz in, like, hey man, like, I've been doing this for friggin' 10 years on sideshows, and, you know, hearing every sexist remark in the world, trying to, you know, just to feed myself. And, you know, this girl waltzes in and she runs right to the top. Well, guess what? Shayna Baszler decides she's going to try out for The Ultimate Fighter because, you know, she's got a lot of showmanship abilities in her, and she never really had a chance to show those off. And she had fought in the other shows that were not the UFC at the highest levels. She fought Cyborg.
And that Baszler on Tough, it sucked me back into Tough. I'll never forget Shayna Baszler said about Juliana Pena. That was who beat her, right?
Yeah.
This girl should be taking my evening jiu-jitsu classes. And I was like, oh, Shayna's gonna murder this chick. And it didn't go that way. And I was so sad. Nothing against Juliana, obviously. Went on to be a Juliana fan. And even more so after she fucking attacked everyone at that bar. But fucking,
So Shayna Baszler has showmanship. So what does she do? She decides to now for a lot of these women, they didn't want to go on the Ultimate Fighter because they thought not that it was below them, but it was like, why should I have to do this? Like I've been grinding it out. Just give me my spot, give me a shot. But she looked at it in a different way. She looked at it as a way to get, to get herself some publicity, like you were talking about. She saw it as an opportunity. And what happened? She ended up being on Ronda Rousey's team, and the way it went down, she ends up becoming, super tight in real life with Ronda, Jessamyn Duke, and Marina Shafir, who Marina Shafir and Ronda Rousey were friends from the judo circuit.
Yep.
Jessamyn Duke was in the Tough House on the same team with Shayna on Ronda's team. Horsewomen, right? And then they end up as the 4 horsewomen. Shayna gives them their real introduction into like what you have to do to sell as like WWE. And then Ronda gets her shot, and obviously she's got the cachet, and she moves over to WWE. And, in the meantime, Shayna puts her MMA career on the side and starts training for a wrestling career at, basically she was probably like 35 when she started doing that with the mileage of an MMA career on her. And, a few years later, now she's worked her way to the top of the WWE. So that's, and yeah, she did. She had a show called Not a Women's MMA Show with Shayna. I came up with that name. Not a women's MMA show. In other words, because she wasn't just going to talk about women's MMA, like she was talking about MMA, but then she had all kinds of different guests and stuff. Yeah.
Ronda, Shayna, basically sacrificing her knee against Betch Correa. I was very thankful for that, because after that happened, remember Betch looked over at Ronda and started counting down the fingers of the 4 horsewomen because she just beat up Jessamyn Duke.
Yeah.
And I remember that point. And like Ronda was, armbarring the shit out of people, out grappling motherfuckers. Her striking was never anything crazy, but there was some power in her punches. It just was not there's a lot of technique behind it, which we saw once she got against Holly. Plus, Holly had the greatest game plan ever, which you called. So after that happened, she started counting on the fingers. I was like, oh my God, Ronda's gonna murder this bitch. And fucking, there was no judo involved in that fight. Ronda beat the fuck out of her. That was a gang beating. Like, holy shit. So thank you, Shayna, for all the things you've given us, plus sacrificing your fucking knee to fucking bitch Correa. Whatever happened to her? She was like 10-1. Ronda killed her, and then she left. She she
fought again after that a few times.
Yeah, but did anyone watch?
She fought in Brazil. I know she must have, because I always loved saying her name, Bitch Correa.
Yeah, fuck.
I guess that's how you pronounce it.
I had nothing against her till she started doing that countdown on her hand. I was like, you don't deserve the right. You don't get to touch Shayna and do that and then act like that. Ronda's gonna fucking kill you.
Yeah, that was a savage beatdown with the fists,
and
only the fists, maybe a knee.
One of the greatest memes ever came out of that, because Betch Correa fell fucking slumped face first on the Straight Outta Compton advertisement that was on the canvas for the NWA movie that was coming out. And the meme fucking floating all over the internet was, oh, look, Straight Outta Compton comes out soon. Oh, fuck. Yeah, she got smoked. Yeah, it's amazing how many people still aren't that big of a fan of women's MMA. Like Krill, my fucking co-host, he can't stand it. He gets grossed out by it. Even if it's like women grappling, he just does not he thinks women, and it's not like he's like, oh, women should be in the kitchen and blah 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 blah. He just wants women to be ladylike. He doesn't want to see fucking Cyborg and fucking, Jan Finney. Where I'm like, this is awesome. What the fuck? Yo, I tried to show him Ioane on Jacek and Zhang Weili, and he wants no part in it. I showed him the picture of Joanna's forehead, and he was like, I don't want to see how that happened, man. That's disgusting.
Oh my God, how could you not want to see how that
I know,
happened?
and he's like,
I've watched it like 5 times now.
He's like, I have a fucking framed picture of Joanna kicking Valentina, what's her name? The French chick.
Germaine Durandamy.
No.
She's not
Joanna, the French one. Valentina Letourneau.
Oh, Valerie Letourneau.
Valerie. Yeah, Valerie. It wasn't Valentina. Yeah, I have a framed picture of Joanna kicking her fucking flat in the face. Okay, there's that, and then there's Anderson kicking Vitor, and Jose Aldo kicking Kenny Florian. Okay, and so he knows I'm a huge fan of Joanna. And he's like, how could you want to watch someone you're a fan of look like that, especially when it's a woman? And I was like, I don't look at it as it's a woman. It's amazing. It's a display of martial arts. And I mean, that's the fucking outcome. And that's kind of like what you say so many times. If it wasn't a woman, certain fights wouldn't be stopped so fast.
Oh, right? It's 100% true.
Yeah. And
that's not from just my observation. This is from the fighters themselves that they're the one, like Tara LaRosa was the one who used to point it out to me all the time. And I was like, okay, let me look at that. She's like, yeah, they shouldn't stop that. It's just blood, but they stop it because you're a woman. I'm like, really? And then I mean, listen, I have, it's my own opinion, my own bias, but I can usually see it, I think, where it's just, you look at the fight and you're like, you know what? If those were guys, they wouldn't have stopped it. And there's certain refs, that maybe are more notorious than others. I don't know who they are at this point. Like, I can't hold it against anybody. Mm. But in general, like, if you see a good ref, they're going to, like, their errors are going to be the same for men's fights as women's fights. Like, Herb Dean is not going to stop a fight early because it's a woman. Like, if he makes a mistake, he's going to make the same kind of mistake that he would make regardless of the sex.
It doesn't matter which ref it is, but that instinct of where it's like, oh, it's a woman, I better stop it. You know what I mean? Like, where you point, not necessarily point that out to, like, pick on any individual person, but, you have pointed out multiple times in the past where it's just like an instinct thing where it's like, stop it because it's women. Where I don't think that's like a sexist thing that's on the referee, right? And I don't think you mean it that way either. It's just that
I wouldn't assume that. No, sometimes right. I think it is.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't think it's like.
See, sexist is such a harsh term, man.
No, but it is. But if you're making that decision based on it being a woman, and you wouldn't do the same for a man, then yeah, it's sexist. It means you think of women being like inferior to it, which is probably pretty proven that it's the opposite, right?
Well,
isn't the opposite like actually physically proven? But
I saw a meme not too long ago. Women say childbirth hurts worse than getting kicked in the nuts. I've never heard a man say "kick me in the nuts" again.
You know anybody who's got triplets?
Fucking yeah, one asshole.
Yep. Thank you. So
wow.
Yeah, I it's look, and then the other argument of it is, well, what about female refs? And then, there's just not that many, right? And Kim Winslow, who was really the highest profile one, she just
fucking I'm putting Kim on blast right now. Because I was just talking about this the other day with Amy Bartner, we were talking about earlier. So many moons ago,
she just wasn't a good rep. I mean, she was bad.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give a shit.
Like, I don't want to. I mean, look, she just wasn't good at it.
I'm not gonna give a shit for all that. I mean, there's no need for beating on that. But so This is back in MMA DieHards Radio days. I got a friend request on Facebook from Kim Winslow. Okay. First vetted out and was like, oh, yeah, it looks real legit. I added her. And it's her. She's still on my Facebook today. It is her. So she sent me some sort of like welcoming message. Or connection message. Like, hey, like, you know, you're fucking whoever you are, which is not much in the MMA media world. Want to reach out, connect, blah, 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 blah. She was looking to go on podcasts or do interviews and just kind of grow a brand. Okay, that's nothing new, right? Whatever you are, you're a referee, you're a fighter, you're a manager, you're a coach. I've had these things before come to me, so that's nothing new. Okay, cool. Let's get Kim Winslow on the show. This will be fucking interesting because a lot of controversy surrounding her, right? She's an active referee at the time. She sent me an email, and I was talking to Amy the other day, and Amy said she's going to look for her old email because the email I got Kim Winslow to send it to was my Jason at MMA DieHards.com email, which I don't have access to anymore. She sent me a media packet with fucking, I'm not even going to try to put a number on it. There were so many fucking things I was not allowed to ask her. And I've never fucking put this out there before, but that is not a thing you should probably do, especially if you're, like we're talking about at that time, you're a female referee, a lot of controversy surrounding you. People don't think you're really good at it. And fucking on top of it, if you're going to be in there with women, that's going to be even fucking worse. When she would do heavyweight fights, it was terrible, but at least that like heavyweight men kind of knew that going in. I don't think the women would have fucking gave her a break at all.
Probably not.
No.
I mean, she reffed a lot of women's fights. Like
I know.
And it wasn't like there wasn't necessarily bias there when she was doing it. It was just
terrible.
She struggled. She struggled.
Yes.
But on the other hand, gotta give her a lot of credit. I mean, she's the first female ref that I can remember. So, it's hard being the first.
Female ref that I can remember.
I feel like there have been others.
Top leagues, Strikeforce, Bellator, UFC.
I feel like Muna Holland has reffed.
Strikeforce, UFC, Bellator.
I feel like Muna Holland has reffed in New Jersey. I'd have to try to check that out. Let's ask Caitlin Chukagian.
Yeah, text her so she cannot answer you again. She fucking big leagued us after her first UFC fight. It was amazing. Good for her.
Did she? I don't know. Maybe.
Fuck yeah. I'm not even mad at it though.
Oh, she's smart. I would have big leagued me too. You kidding me? Not the Queen of Spades though.
No.
She still takes the texts. Yeah. Might have to get her on. I don't know if she's allowed to talk about MMA anymore though.
Yep.
Maybe I could get her to talk about baseball. Welcome to Spade Diehards. With the Queen of Spades. Diamond Diehards is spades tonight for the Queen of Spades.
We're talking about those people that link on other things from their MMA careers. The other day, that shit I put on Facebook, though, it's just going around because of everybody being in a quarantine. 10 famous people I've met, one is a lie. We're not going to play the game or anything. But who are, fighter-wise, I mean, you've met the who's who. I think the only one that would probably really stand out to people that a lot of people, whether they're a fan or inside the sport, is Fedor you met.
Yeah.
But outside of...
Man, I'll tell you what about Fedor. He was about to fight Bigfoot Silva, and it was at the Izod Center in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And Maggie Kroll, I'm talking about Maggie so much tonight.
What Luke Thomas sat you that night?
Yeah, sat next to Luke Thomas that night. He was so cool. We had a good chat. And
I don't know if you're being facetious right now or not. He was so cool.
He was. No, we
Okay.
had
Okay. No, it
great.
just kind of came off as like he was so cool.
No, you know
Okay.
I love Luke Thomas.
Okay.
Don't even.
Oh no.
I'm huge Luke Thomas forever. So okay, yeah. So Maggie had the camera and she stayed like backstage, and I was going to my seat because I was writing the fights as I was doing them, and then I'd run back and I'd grab the mic and I'd do video with the fighters that just won. So whoever it was, I ran back there and I was doing the interview, and it was before Fedor was about to come on, and we finished. We like waited our turn to get whoever it was. I can't even remember who won. And we wrap it. We're like, oh, okay, thanks, great. It was like a good interview. And we're about to walk out, and we can't go anywhere because Fedor and his entourage are standing 2 feet in front of us, blocking, not on purpose, but they're blocking the path for me to get like into, like, because I would walk in the same place where his walkout is going to be. Like, I have to follow that same path, and he's standing, I want to say 3 feet in front of me and Maggie, and he's got his game face on, and he's like jogging in place, and he's getting lathered up, and he's smacking himself in the face, and like me and Maggie are looking at each other like, holy shit, this is right here. I'm like, film it, turn it on. Like, oh my God. That was one of, if not my best MMA experience ever. He was right there. You could feel the intensity, and he lost. I mean, he lost that fight, but
it doesn't matter.
It was
you were in breathing space of Fedor.
You felt it. You definitely felt.
Oh, I can
that,
feel. Like, feeling out. You talking about it?
Maggie didn't, like, she knew, but she didn't, like, no, and she's even looking at me like, holy shit, this is like we're witnessing something like really fucking amazing here, aren't we? Like we get to stand here, like, holy crap, like we get to stand here right now and see this. It was intense. It was phenomenal. It was really, really, really phenomenal. That was a great experience.
That definitely would be.
Yeah.
But outside of that MMA realm, and not your other sports walks of life, like through MMA, who are some of the other people that you've crossed paths with or been connected to? You look how, like, when we were doing that, what was it? It was like that 6 weeks we did like that Jay and Joe MMA show, or whatever the fuck.
Oh my God.
We had the chef, Mike.
Oh yeah, Mike Isabella.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, fucking, I know on MMA DieHards, Ton Jones.
Ton Jones,
right?
yeah.
You see, the guy from the movie Warrior, the MMA movie, I interviewed him through MMA DieHards, and you know what I mean? You get to run into different people in different ways, whether it be in person or...
Oh, Sean Farris.
He was
in Never Back Down. He was in Never Back Down. He was the character, lead character.
You interviewed him?
I interviewed him at an IFL show, ringside in Vegas. Cage side Vegas. That's actually, I'm going to shout out my friend Kitch right now. I'm going to have to make him listen to it because he showed up in Vegas because he lived in California, and he was like co-hosting with me, and we had Ken Shamrock on, and we were literally just joking about this yesterday. Kitch was so in awe of Ken Shamrock that Ken Shamrock called him out. He goes, "You look like a deer in the headlights. You all right?"
I remember you telling me that before.
It was great.
I'm waiting to get to a Ken Shamrock story to wrap this up, but another
Ken
other
Shamrock,
people.
man. You want to talk about a guy? So he's an MMA and a wrestling guy, but like, I mean, he's a pretty like at times, right? He's been such a huge guy and a huge name, and like always been like every time I ever dealt with him, he was like so good, like bend over backwards for you. But I guess um, you're trying to talk about people outside the realm. Demon Honshu, he was also in Never Back Down. He's a great actor. Um, Otavia Bourdain, that was a big one.
Oh, we had her on
Yeah,
once.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. We were actually, quite friendly back in the day. I haven't caught up with her,
I remember when we had
in the
her
past.
on, I did not get it. And about a little while later on in life, I got it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's why we had her on. Right? Yeah, I didn't get it at the time.
She's just a great person,
Yeah.
like a real, like a genuine person.
Yeah, like that's I got, Anthony Bourdain's wife. I got the Henzo Gracie connection, but I didn't get anything else. And then that's what I mean. Like I got it later on. It's like, oh, yo, there's like she's not the same as this, but for lack of a better explanation, like a Michelle Obama, right? It's like it's not like okay, she's the president's wife, but it's not just she's the president's wife. You know what I mean? There's so much more to it, right?
Right.
It's
So
not
what
like
it
so
really was is that she was a like a just a champion for the women's side of like MMA and jiu-jitsu and combat sports. She was a big supporter of it. She was vocal,
But
but
when
she
we
was
had
but
when
she
we
was
had her
genuine.
on, she
She was
wasn't on there trying to prove a point. You know what I mean? Like there was
no,
nothing
no.
on there, right? She was just this like she. It was weird to me too because I remember her being like, "Oh, what am I doing here with these guys? Like these like she like it felt like she was looking up to us like she doesn't deserve to be in this spot." And I was like, that really threw me off. I was like, I don't know why Joe booked her and what's going on here. But and then it took me a while to realize that, like, oh, I get it. Like she's just
Very humble, really good
yeah, yeah.
conversationalist.
That's how her
Like
message comes across, right?
Yeah,
It's not.
yeah, she's just really like all behind the scenes,
Yep.
never looking for attention,
Yeah.
would do anything for those fighters and to help people out and just was never nothing was ever below her. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Nothing or no one. Just a really genuine person. And when I used to work in the city, I got to catch up with her. It's just, very, very nice that she came on the show. We've lost touch now for a little bit here over the years, but I don't know. I'll run into her again. We'll get her on the show. I always say that. I'm like, we'll get her on the show again. I don't know what show we'll get her on. I'm not sure what show we'll get her on. We'll get her on the show. This is great. I did Rear Naked Choke Radio. It was like an 11-minute episode or something before I did this. And now I'm wondering like what you didn't want to talk about MMA, and then we ended up talking about a lot of MMA. But
Yeah,
we,
because we're talking about you. We're talking about us. We're talking about MMA DieHards. We're talking about we're not talking about fucking UFC 249 being canceled. Who gives a shit? It's done. That's fine. We're
that
talking about
basically
good time.
that basically was just the whole
2010.
episode that I just did.
2010. Here, back to another good Ken Shamrock story. You have one of the best Ken Shamrock stories. The night he was going to fight Kimbo Slice. I've heard this. Other people have heard this, but this has not been told on my show, The Building Downtown. And I think a lot of people, since we're just talking about Ken Shamrock, a lot of people already know him. We already talked about him, and a lot of people know Kimbo Slice. So, speaking of being behind the scenes at shows, Elite XC, that was one of the most, I don't know, would corrupt be the right words to say?
Dubious?
Okay. We'll pull out the thesaurus for this one. Let's go
man,
with
that would be. Wait, are we talking about battle rap now?
Ken Shamrock. Kimbo Slice. They were about to fight one night. And shortly before they were going to fight, all of a sudden, Ken Shamrock's eye had a laceration above it. And then they bring in Seth Petrozelli. Did you happen to catch that show?
I was at that show.
I know.
And the weigh-in.
Give my listeners something to listen to.
Oh, boy. Where do we start with that? The 305, Kimbo. This was back when Ted was still hosting with me. So I think we were still the Ron show back then. Benji Raddick was on that card, and he fought Ninja Hua, Shogun's younger brother. Big Country Nelson was on there. He fought Andrei Arlovsky. Chris Cyborg was on there. Gina Carano was on that card. I mean, it was just insane. And that's when I first saw another little known fact. Gina Carano has a sister that's better looking than Gina Carano, by the way, if you could believe that. So I met her and their mom. But yeah, that whole weekend was crazy. Like, I remember Ken Shamrock. After the weigh-ins, there was like a brawl at the weigh-ins, and I remember we were at the hotel bar restaurant, and Ken Shamrock floats in with Karen Bryant. Like, I guess they had done an interview or something. Like, Mauro Ranallo was there. He was like calling it. I mean, there were just so many big names. I'm trying to think if Gus Johnson was there. We did a lot of good interviews. Shannon Knapp, who later went on to start Invicta. She was Roy Nelson. Brad Blackburn was there cornering Benji Raddick. There were just so many people that we talked to and interviewed. But, there was the whole melee before, and then, we're doing a pre-fight show, and then they don't have a credential for us, like, to be in the stands, and they're giving us seats in the stands. I'm like, I don't need a seat in the stands. I need someplace to put my computer. It was just a big melee. And, we're scrambling, finding out, like, when everybody else is, like, before the fight, that Ken Shamrock can't fight, and that they were moving Seth Petrozelli because he made weight and he was licensed. I don't even know what the hell went on. Gina Carano weighs in. She misses weight by like 4 pounds and then takes off her bra and makes weight. The infamous 3.5 pound bra. Like, that was the thing. And then there was a Japanese photographer next to me at the weigh-ins. And so what they did was, like, now they have, like, they're usually prepared if somebody weighs in and they have to, like, strip all the way down. They have, like, these portable curtain things that really cover everything up. Yeah. But then it was like, oh, go everybody grab a bunch of towels. So Gina misses weight. She's completely, like, sucked out. And they grabbed the towels, and her dad was there. I remember her dad, Glenn Carano, was there, and he's holding up, one of the towels, and they're all around, and suddenly she makes weight, and I'm standing, like, in the back, like, I wasn't even sitting down. The place was packed for a weigh-in, and this is when weigh-ins were the actual weigh-in. It wasn't like the fake
ceremonial bullshit,
which is the dumbest thing in the world. Like, I don't get it.
Now, how am I supposed to bet and lose my money?
Well, just watch the normal weigh-in, and why are we doing a ceremonial weigh-in? We could just do a ceremonial anything. It doesn't have to be a weigh-in. This Japanese photographer, he taps me. He goes, "Oh, look at this. I'm like, okay, you got pictures of Gina. And he had, like, a nip slip pic of Gina Carano. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I cursed the guy out.
God.
I'm like, get rid of that, you fucking asshole. Like, what are you doing?
Creep.
I was like, come on, dude. What are you doing? I'm like, get rid of that. Like, he was showing it to me, like, I guess to, like, impress me. and I was happy with my reaction. Um, but I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe he's going to sell it and get rich or something. But I did never see the picture. I never even saw a hint of that picture anywhere else except in the guy's viewfinder on his camera. So maybe he listened to me, or maybe he has it somewhere or whatever. You know, photographers capture a lot of stuff and they don't always release it. So if they do by right, then good for them. But that was just one. I so many things happened that weekend. Oh my God, it was just crazy. And we were doing this show like pre-fight, and we were having trouble getting on the internet, and we're in the press room, and usually we would do these shows like cage side, and we weren't getting the same treatment that we were used to, like with the IFL. And I just remember, like, I was on the air, and like I was carrying it on the air myself, and we couldn't get guests because we were in the press room. Like usually we'd just grab guests, like people would be walking around, we grab them, hey, come sit down with us.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do that because, like we were in the press room. We did get somebody, I don't know. I could go back through the archives and see who we actually got. But Ted was running around trying to find the story of like what happened. Like, is Ken Shamrock really not fighting? Like, what the hell are we doing? And then eventually, like, it came down in drips and drabs, and we found out. And I'm trying to even remember if we were able to do that show live on the stream or if we had to like post it later. I think we probably had some version that was not very good live, and I had to just edit it and post it later. But it kind of captured like the hectic nature of what was going on. It would be interesting to dig it up one day. I got to go through like those shows are no longer posted anywhere because I think iTunes only keeps the last like 300 episodes available. And TalkShoe had a glitch a few years ago. That's where all the shows are housed. And it restarted from like 2015, I think. And this was like 2008. So if I ever got really, really ambitious, I could go back and start posting like 7 years worth of shows on there. I have thought about it. I have them. I actually have them. I have them all backed up and archived somewhere. But I don't think that many people care. But it might be interesting every now and then. Like I go back and I listen to some of those old shows or bits and pieces of them, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's really going to want to listen to this. And I recently did that because we were talking about Caitlin Chukagian, who fought Valentina Shevchenko for the title a month or two ago. Or I don't know, or it could have been 5 years ago, the way that the world has changed. I was like, oh, let me go back and find her on-air debut. She had never done any kind of show before. And it was like so funny because this fighter, she hadn't even made her amateur debut at the time. And she was on as kind of like an afterthought. Like she was just sitting with us and she didn't really, have too much to say. But it wasn't so great, so I never really posted it. I was going to cut it up a little bit and maybe make it like a little bit presentable, but like if she comes on, maybe I'll play that again. I'll play parts of it. Be like, hey, this is the first time you were on the air. This is like, I think it was like 2012 or something like that, So 8 years later, she was a title contender.
That's funny.
Yeah. Lots of those stories.
I was just gonna say, it's funny how many of the stories there are that that whether it be on site, like covering an event, funny stories, someone who you're interviewing, whether they be like Rose. We had Rose. I interviewed her before she was in Invicta.
You gotta say last names. You gotta say last names. People don't know.
Motherfucking Rose damn Eunice. So, like that connection, and it's not like she's local to me, so I watch her, every step of the way. Yeah, like I'm friends with her coaches and this and that. But furthermore, there is the Trevor Whitman connection with Conner Cordova to make you happy, right? So the connection to Trevor. Obviously, I was paying more attention to fighters that he was producing. because of Conner Cordova. And never like I said, wasn't a local thing, but definitely kept in touch with Rose and watched her career grow. So whether it be someone like that on the media side where from afar you keep touch with them, keep in touch with them, interview them every now and then when shit is right, and you get these things you can look back on where it's like, holy fuck, if I look back and listen to this recorded phone interview that was turned into a written piece, and then how it turns into they're on MMA DieHards Radio or whatever podcast, and so on and so forth, and then you don't even have touch with them anymore, and they're on ESPN all the time, or like a local fighter, like a Caitlin Chukagian, like you're talking about, right? Who you actually are watching grow on that scene, and you're giving some shine and watching them grow and get all the way up to a UFC title shot. There's so many of those stories for people like you, me, people who have covered the sport for whether they did back in the day, whether they're still doing it, or they've just started doing it in recent years.
I'll give you another one that you and I share.
What's that?
I mean, we used to talk to Laura Sanko before anybody knew who the hell she was.
Dude, we introduced Laura Sanko to Tommy Tohold. You want to know Laura Sanko? You want to fucking, here's one for the world. Laura Sanko got on the show because we wanted Jess Philippus on, and Jess is friends with Laura, and Jess wanted us to have Laura on. That's fucking, and also, here's another one, and this shit can even be looked up because it's out there on RNC Radio. Laura asking us for advice and tips when she was interviewing, like doing, she was getting her first interviewing, like, or in cage post fight interviewing shit for Invicta, and we gave her tips, and then a few months later she was doing the same gig, and there was that Finnish chick in there. It was a champion. What's her name?
The bunny. What the hell's her name?
We'll go with that. Sure. Okay. Because I ain't got it either. And remember, we were trying to figure out congratulations or well done or whatever.
Yeah.
And when we would play it, it sounded different in United States Google than Canadian Google. And there was Onya was Canadian, and the United States one, when you do it, was Onya something else. And I remember Laura was like, I'm gonna go with the fucking American Canadian Finnish translation or something like that. She called it
Killer Bunny. The Killer Bunny. That was her name.
What's that?
The Killer Bunny. That was
but what's her real name?
It's something with a lot of K's in it.
Yeah, right. But fucking Laura's a good one, and that's not like, I mean, I speak for both of us. I'm pretty sure we're not like, man, if it wasn't for us, there'd be no Laura. That's not it at all. But it's funny looking back on that, right? And those shows are documented. They're out there still. With Laura asking us for fucking help. Not help, but, advice. I'm sure she was asking people much more qualified than us, too. But yeah, Laura, I remember the one time you said to Laura, she's basically become our third co-host. And she said, I don't see a paycheck.
Katja Kankanpa.
Yeah.
That's it. That's who it was.
Oh, yeah. Katja Kankanpa?
Katja Kankanpa.
I'm so glad that you like European hockey players. It's saved my ass so many times in this MMA.
I mean, I like a lot of hockey players.
You like locker rooms with guys too, so what does that say? Yeah,
I've covered women's sports too. I've covered women's sports too.
But yeah, fuck. 2010 till now. At least we're still having fun.
Longer than that.
All the stories the Kenton Shamrocks, the Laura Sankos, the Killer Bunnies. Did you just say Rizzo? Remember that?
Kevin Randleman.
Fuck yeah.
The late great Kevin Randleman.
Jason Perillo.
He's doing good now, Jason Perillo.
He's what?
He's doing good.
He was doing good then.
No, I mean he's working hard on himself, I think.
Yeah. Fuck. What other kind of great stories have we had from the Rear Naked Choke radio days and MMA Diehards and the Jay and Joe's MMA show?
My God.
That was fucking hilarious. The best part was the first one that we did. You're like, so what do we call this now? I don't know. You're like, well, Jay and Joe's MMA show. And that's what you fucking went with.
But
Yo, those are still out there, eh? So,
you know what?
Those shows.
Like,
Greg Jackson. Fucking Jackson was on one.
I think we had like some good guests on
Greg
that when we did it. I know. Like, I just feel bad that we did those shows under that name, and then like people didn't know like who we were. You know what I mean? Like, kind of lost the.
It didn't. It took at the most, I'd say, 10 of those shows before you were like, fuck this. And that's when RNC radio started again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough of that. Because MMA DieHards was done. You were gone. Hector's trying to make a deal with someone else, and the deal didn't work out. And I don't know. I was fucking done working for nothing. Not for nothing. No, like, no, it's not necessarily like not getting like pay I deserve, but what am I doing here? Fuck. I'm basically giving content to fucking tumbleweeds. Fuck this shit. Jay and Joe's MMA show with Greg Jackson.
That was like a really good interview that we did with him.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
You talked to him all about fucking John chasing down the mugger and everything.
That was one of my.
Yo, it's another one. I was thinking about the other day. Do you remember when you were talking to Demetrius Johnson? You came on to guest co-host because Bob Batters fucking bailed after like a show and a half. Freaking, you came on. I had Demetrius and I forget who else on, and it was when Demetrius right after he won the belt, and you said he was going on about the high point. And he said, "Well, if that was the high point, what was the low point?" And he talked about how he almost walked away from the UFC to join the army. Do you remember that shit?
Yep.
I remember you texted me as he was saying it. He's like, "There's your angle for a written piece."
Yep.
I was just thinking about the other day because I'm thinking about having Demetrius on soon. Because now I don't have to talk to him about like the flyweight division, whatever. Talk to Demetrius about whatever and. Like outside of MMA. Plus, I don't know what the fuck's going on over in one. It's all got to be a whole new look, right? So there's something to talk to him about. But yeah, I remember when you did that, and I was like, God damn, this guy's a pro.
But I mean, think about that, right? Like that sort of goes to what we were talking about before with the level of athlete, right? Like if that athlete goes to the army or just goes to a different sport, say, like then you never get to see it in MMA, like a Henry Cejudo, right? Like, okay, he goes from wrestling and it's a natural progression into MMA, but I mean, it's not a guarantee. The guys always say all the time in the gyms, they're like, the wrestlers are great. On the first day if they can make it in MMA or not, because you just see if they can take getting punched in the face. And when a good wrestler can take getting punched in the face, they'll say, okay, he's got a good chance to be good at MMA. I mean, it's like almost that simple, So, and then a guy like Cejudo was, I mean, now he just does he does his shtick and he's got the cringe thing. And, it is actually pretty funny. Like if you get it, but
it took me a while
people
to get
don't
it,
realize
I love it.
I don't think people realize how great of a wrestler he was. Like
Cejudo?
he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He was absolutely unbelievable. For his story, if he never went to the UFC, his story is an amazing American success story. If he never went to the UFC, oh my God.
Well, I didn't know, man. I'm asking legitimately. I'm not just trying to keep the conversation going. Like,
yeah,
for real. Like, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Like he never should have made it. And,
Oh, really? I didn't know it was like odds are against him.
Odds are against him. He had no shot. Go look it up. You could do a whole episode on him.
Well, I'm assuming there's got to be some documentaries or some shit out there about him or some shit to read.
Go look it up.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not gonna ruin it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I look it up. There's got to be some documentaries, some shit to read, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. You could find some good stories.
I like his cringeness. It's fucking amazing. He's just such a fucking he's makes me want to throw up, and I love that he's doing it. I hated it for so long. Now I love it.
No, I totally get it. He's again, he saw that opportunity and he just jumped on it. I mean, he's
killing it too.
Yeah.
Apparently he's fighting Dominic Cruz.
Well, we'll see. On Fight Island.
Yeah. Fuck.
If you want to find out when, go tune into Rear Naked Choke Radio, the latest episode. It's way shorter than this. I feel like I'm like Eric Weinstein and you're Joe Rogan now. What hour are we into?
I don't know who Eric Weinstein is, but I'll take the Joe Rogan compliment any day.
Well, he's just one of the recent guests. He was just on recently.
Oh.
One of the 3-hour guests.
Oh, fucking that's what we do.
This might be a little bit long for people.
Usually is.
Yeah.
I learned from you.
I think my fastball's taking a little dip here. So I'm going to start saying...
got the change up.
Do I have the right show?
All right. Follow Joe at Rear Naked Choke. Follow at Diamond Diehards. I haven't checked the Twitter handle yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on Twitter and Instagram as Diamond Diehards. But Diamond Diehards also has a really good Facebook group. So go find the Facebook group. That's kind of like the hot thing now. And Diamond Diehards and Rear Naked Choke Radio are available for subscription on all the regular services. And if not, just tweet me and I'll get it on there somewhere, somehow. And
follow at RNC Radio because why not? It's never going to die as long as one of us are alive. Follow the show, The Building Downtown, at The Building DT. You can subscribe, follow YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all the places that are good. Joe, anything else before we get out of here?
Just thank you and stay the fuck inside.
Stay the fuck inside, people. Stay safe, all you assholes. Be smart. Until next time.
Building downtown.